do I already have this? Do I have something that fills this purpose? A $50 guitar versus a $200 guitar. I feel like I sound like a crazy person. So there you are, staring down the price tag of a shiny, beautiful new guitar, mic, or pedal. You're in Guitar Center, or Sam Ash, or on Facebook Marketplace. Someone on the internet or in your band swears this is the only way you can get that warm studio tone, and it's actually the one the Beatles used, or Nirvana used. The Shure SM7B was used by Michael Jackson, and you need that. So you take out your credit card, come home and open it up, and for the first few weeks, it's awesome. Your home studio is the best it's ever been, but then you realize you don't have the right speakers, and your favorite producer uses these headphones, or this pedal, or this guitar, and the cycle repeats. The Pareto principle, more commonly known as the 80-20 rule, states that in many systems, 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes. I started noticing this effect in a lot of places, and it made my life easier to understand its importance and where it shows up and what it's actually doing, so I could take advantage of it. Examples of this effect are everywhere, and they kind of help explain how a large set of phenomenon can be attributed to a small amount of their causes. How can this be? What does this have anything to do with buying guitars? In this video, I'm going to try to explain what the 80-20 rule is and how it applies to purchasing musical equipment. Of course, this rule doesn't apply everywhere. For example, 33% of adults sleep with a comfort object, so not 20%. It's not like 20% of adults. 80% of adults sleep with 20% of whatever. Or another example is if you've made it this far in the video, you're 100% likely to like and subscribe. So there you are, staring down the price tag of a shiny, beautiful new piece of musical equipment. It's a guitar, it's a pedal, it's a mic, whatever. Someone on the internet, your bandmate, says that this is the thing you need to get that warm tone. This is what Nirvana used in the studio, whatever. So you get it, you take it home, you open it up, and for a few weeks, you love it. You're digging it, you're enjoying it. But then, eventually, you realize you don't have the right speakers. You don't have the right headphones. Industry standard to have this mixer, or this console, or this whatever, or that guitar. Or the tone of your guitar doesn't fit the style of music you're trying to play anymore. Or you found one that does it better. And the cycle repeats, and you constantly find yourself buying gear to keep up with yourself, seemingly, and it doesn't really make any sense. The Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, states that in many systems, 80% of the effects can be attributed to 20% of the causes. I started noticing this effect everywhere in my life, or in a lot of places I should say, and understanding that it happens and how it happens can really help you take advantage of it in certain situations. Generally speaking, it means that a large set of the consequences of a certain phenomenon can be attributed to a small percent of the contributing factors. So what does all that mean, and how can it be applied to gear, music, right? So in this video, I'm going to try to explain how that applies to gear, how that can even apply to songwriting, and mixing and producing and all that kind of stuff, and practicing, how you can use it to maximize your budget, but also how you can kind of find it in other places in your life. So one example of where this doesn't apply is that 33% of adults sleep with a comfort object. That has nothing to do with the 80-20 rule. There's no, well, 80% of adults who have this end up with this. There's places where it just doesn't fit. Another example is if you've made it this far in the video, you're 100% likely to like and subscribe, baby. So let's rock and roll. Another one is if you've made it this far in the video, you're 100% likely to like and subscribe, because if you're not, I'm not going to finish the video. So what does this have to do with music gear? Think about it for a few seconds. 80% of your time is probably only on 20% of your gear. 80% of your time playing an electric guitar is probably only on 1 or 2 pickups. But if you're like me, 80% of your money doesn't go towards 20% of your gear. I'm suggesting using the 80-20 rule as a way to apply the idea of being more discerning when it comes to buying gear in the first place. This means that when it comes to buying gear, it pays to focus on the 20% that will provide the most benefit, the essentials that will actually get you the sound that you want. I'm suggesting using the 80-20 rule to apply the idea of being more discerning when it comes to buying gear in the first place. So that means when it comes to buying gear, you're going to focus on the 20% that you're actually going to be using all the time, and that is going to get you the desired sound that you want and that you're working towards, and that will provide you value, even if it means not buying other things and paying more money for the things that you actually want or feel like you're going to use. By avoiding the temptation to buy every piece of gear that looks impressive or cool or shiny or fun, but ends up being like a gimmick or something that you use once and you don't really play around with at all ever, you can save money and you can avoid wasting time on items that don't make much of a difference, If you've ever bought a piece of gear or a pedal or a guitar that you thought you were going to use all the time, but it didn't really pan out that way, let me know in the comments so we can all avoid doing that. So for me, two good examples of this is that I have a digital delay and a tremolo pedal, and for the kind of music that I'm making, I don't really use them ever at all. I didn't need to buy them in the first place. I'm probably going to look to sell them. And I also have a lot of affordable guitars in like the $100 to $200 range, because I'll see them on Facebook Marketplace and I'm like, okay, I can get this for a deal. I want an SG, but I don't want to break the bank, so I'm going to get an Epiphone SG. And then I end up with a bunch of electric guitars that serve a worse purpose than the one that my everyday one, my heavy hitter, that I don't really use. Even just considering using the rule when you're purchasing can add that level of discretion that you need to say, okay, maybe I don't need this. Maybe this isn't something I'm going to be using 80% of the time, and it's going to be sitting on a shelf collecting dust, or I'm going to sell it on Facebook Marketplace for half of what I bought it for. I feel like I sound like a prosy person. If you're on a tight budget, this means focusing on the gear that will give you the most improvement over your sound for the money that you spend, or the most value over time. This can help you focus on buying quality stuff that you're actually going to be using. I think that there's a lot to be said about value items and having things in that space that are accessible for people to say, okay, well, I want a tremolo pedal, but I don't want a $2,000 one. I want an overdrive pedal, but I don't want a $1,000 one. I want a guitar to go to the studio, but I don't have $1,200 for a guitar. There's definitely a lot of merit to having instruments that are affordable, that can allow people, that are accessible, and can allow people who don't have the funds to get into music and mess around with a delay pedal or a 12-string guitar. There's value in having things that are affordable, but the idea here is to stay away from buying things for the sake of thinking that they're cool, and actually being discerning and auditing yourself and saying, well, what am I actually going to use? Am I ever going to use this thing? Maybe it takes buying it to figure that out, but I think more often than not, or at least myself, I think more often than not, I find myself buying things because they're shiny and they're cool, and I think they'd be really fun to play with, when the reality is that for the pragmatic things that I'm doing, I'm not going to be using it that much. Something else that I've noticed is that the 80-20 rule is really closely tied in with the law of diminishing returns, where after a certain point, the amount of benefit gained from a purchase decreases versus how much you're spending on it. Well, which is another thing that can be applied in a lot of places. If you spend 5 minutes in the gym, you're not getting too much out of it. If you spend 45 minutes in the gym, you're probably there for a decent amount of time. And anything more than that, you're getting less and less value for the amount of time you're spending there. And I think that, for the most part, that can be said about guitars too. A $50 guitar versus a $200 guitar is a significant difference and increase in quality. A $200 guitar versus a $500 guitar is going to have a notable increase in quality, but maybe not the same difference as the 50 versus the 200. And then the 600 versus the 1200 or 1400 is still going to have a significant increase in quality and craftsmanship and tone, I'm sure, but not to the level of the $50 to the $200 one, right? So the more that you spend on gear, the less you're getting back for it, and you want to find a sweet spot where you can find something that's affordable, that you're actually going to use, and you're not just wasting money on superfluous additional value that you're really not going to be getting. There are a million videos out there that are like cheap versus expensive, whatever. Most of them will exemplify this phenomenon, where after a certain point, you're getting diminishing returns on the amount of money that you're spending on a guitar. I think that there's a lot of value to be said with being more discerning about the frivolous purchases that we make when we don't really need it. And it's not something that I consider often when I'm buying gear. I'm not saying, do I already have this? Do I have something that fills this purpose? Am I going to be using this often? I'm saying, wow, that's a really cool thing for a really fair price. Let me pick that up. And then I use it and I say, wow, this is really cool. And then I go back into my habit of the songs that I usually play, or the style that I usually play in, or the tone that I already like. And I still explore out of that. And I think, honestly, gear is a really good way to kind of break that barrier and say, well, I'm going to try something new by using this thing that I haven't used before. But the trade-off is that you're spending a bunch of money on something that might do something that you already have. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. I think that there's a lot of value, again, in trying new things and experimenting with different gear and having a market of affordable gear that people can leverage. But the trade-off of that is that if you already have something that does it, and you have something that does it better, or you want to do something better, buying 3 smaller guitars is not the way to do it. Thank you. If you made it this far, again, please like and subscribe so I can make more content in the future or something. If you disagree with anything that I said, please just lie and say that you really liked the video in the comments. Thanks, and have a good life. Peace.